What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here and welcome back to the Metallica discography. Today I'm going to be reviewing the band's 5th album as a follow-up to And Justice for All, entitled The Black Album. The Black Album was released in 1991 on the 12th of August, making this the band's 3rd record through Elektra Records, the 2nd album with Jason Newsted as the band's permanent bassist, and also the debut record with a different producer, the producer who would become the band's permanent one, who works with Metallica for more than a decade, from this album to the early 2000s, the producer that is Bob Rock. This is an album that has escalated Metallica's own presence as a band to global stardom and massive success. The band to this point were no longer a thrash aesthetic only style band, and with And Justice for All being a very technical, complex, progressive and an impending political burst of messaging, this is a record which opens Metallica into many new things, opening a variety into simplistic writings, and with the identity of the Black Album now out to the world, this is when Metallica have reached the full potential into the mainstream and commercialism. The Black Album later on has become the band's biggest selling album to date. For looking at the statistics of the other sales, Canada had given the Black Album its Diamond certification, which is an outstanding achievement. Now, in my opinion, when it comes to the success and the stardom of the Black Album, making Metallica to become one of the biggest bands of all time, the album itself, as much as I really appreciate it, I defend my words that this is one of the most overrated albums of all time, because I did not really think this is one of the greatest follow-up albums and not one of the greatest of all time. As much as I love the previous 4 records, the appreciation of the Black Album is still here with me, but in terms of the whole record being very different, it is a really, really good album for what it's worth. This is an album that is entirely consistent in its difference of songwriting and the noticeable appearance in the mixing being, for me, an improvement over what And Justice for All was. And one of the best things about this album is the production. Bob Rock's take into production makes the whole sound of Metallica as fresh, as dominated, but in a prolific and a clearer style and sound. I love the drum sounds to the mixing of the bass and the guitars, and I do find Bob Rock to be later on a significant person in the history of Metallica. The first track, and with this being said, one of the biggest songs of all time in Metallica's repertoire, and yet alone, in my opinion, the most overrated song, that being Enter Sandman. Mysterious guitar notes, accompanying wahs, booming toms to begin the track, super cool riff, and the song remains as a worldwide anthem, and it has been known as one of their biggest hits. But just because I said it being overrated, it is still a fun song, without a doubt. The lyrics go into the descriptions of a child's fear in nightmares situation, with the Sandman symbolizing the sleep that he dreads. However, the Sandman of European folklore actually brings good dreams, but there are talks of whether the Sandman can bring in good dreams or nightmares. Later lyrics go into references of Snow White, a Disney reference, and another one of Neverland, which is a land from another Disney character, being Peter Pan. The awesome lead work from Kirk strikes right through the speakers. It's a top-notch song to open the album. The next track, Sad But True, one of the heavier tracks involving lower tunings in the key of D this time. The suspense of the riff still brings in its own dirge. Smacking drums worked as aggressively. There's a lot of attitude into Hetfield's singing, and the lyrics go into the person's darker side of control, although some of them can be, personal in the vein of Hetfield's expressions. And there's a lot of this interpretation from Hetfield's addictions into this track that will later on become very consistent later on. Lyrics of attention-seeking to troubled relationships, and the later verses addresses the dealing of the damage and to suffer the consequences, brooding writing, striking materialism of the band's sound of assaulting power. I think this is one of my favourite songs when they went into this approach. Holier Than Thou. This is one that I don't see a lot of the fans praise as much, and it's severely underrated. Terrific beginning on the drums, following the guitars and the bass, makes its appearance in this pumping hook. The drums remain very consistent in its own patterns, and strong vocals in its entirety. The lyrics go in the self-righteousness expression and places in some Bible references in paraphrasing Jesus, pointing out the hypocrisy and not practicing what you're preaching. One of my other favourites as well. It's really crunchy in the performances, and I think it follows up Sad But True perfectly. The Unforgiven. The beginning into the Unforgiven trilogy. The second one would be included in Reload, and the third one would be included in Death Magnetic. A quiet, gentle acoustic touch, clean guitars to grow the melody, taking the mood into its mellow aspects. The vocals were beautifully expressive, and the guitars' distortion follow along this structure, and the drums contain the simplicity, but it completes the overall soul in the instrumentation's emotional contact. The delicate mix of the band also adds a dynamic texture, which stands out as well. The vocals from Hetfield were powerful, as the lyrics were adding his mother's illness of cancer, and Hetfield's struggling from the religion that's heavily related to his mother, and the relatives didn't want his mother any treatment due to her religious beliefs. It's a highlight of the album in terms of the band exploring things in this stellar moment. Beautiful song, despite its very heartfelt, heartbreaking results. Wherever I May Roam. Again, this is one of the songs that actually some people do love, but in my experience, it's not one of my favourites because I do find it to be pretty repetitive from the overall creation, and it didn't deliver as strong with me. But nonetheless, it has a moody beginning from the guitars, and here's some notes on the sitar, slower pacing coming in and then boosting the energy to mid-speed direction. Makes a sinister touch, unsettling nature musically. A drifter who walks through the earth and feeling content of being on the road. Normatic soul through the lyrics' imagery with little possession. Minimalism of lifestyle. Carry what they can physically, traveling to new places wherever they go, and learn about them through different people. It's a pretty good song, but I never fully understood the overall love about this one. So unfortunately, this does continue to really feel the same feelings for me as one of my least favourites on the album. The next track, Don't Tread on Me. This is a song which I enjoy very, very much, and one of my other favourites because it's full of this intensity. It also adds variety on the drumming of shuffling beats. This was an inscription of the Gadsden flag from the start of the lyrics, and it was actually, according to the audience, they thought it was like an anti-war song, but it was not true, according to Hetfield's inspiration, because the words dives into the reference of a letter Benjamin Franklin wrote to the Pennsylvania Journal addressing what would become the Gadsden flag. The music was very catchy and awesome, while the whole band sounded as heavy and delivers in tight grooves. Through the Never, this one boosts into the thrashy fruition throughout this whole composition, controlling playing style and adding in a lot of the chugging guitar riffage. The lyrics were saying on the analysing whatever people see around the universe, thinking of the unknown and seeking knowledge, finding the truth no matter where it lies, and wondering why reality, begun through the creation of the universe. It's a really, really good song, from the guitar work being really progressive in this precise style and grabs so much by the throat from the way Hetfield really sings his heart out. Then the ballad of Nothing Else Matters. I think this is the ultimate song. Whenever I listen to this album, I really enjoy a lot of this album, but Nothing Else Matters is delicate, as emotional, but this is connected in so much beauty. The slow fade in on the 12-string guitars, opening vocals from Hetfield was really melodic, and the tone later on of the orchestration just adds a powerful move for the band's overall worth, and its emotion is also gorgeous. I do adore this song. One of the greatest and pinnacle moments in the overall exploration, again, just like with The Unforgiven, but Nothing Else Matters is as reflective. This was addressing the lyrics of the relationship with his girlfriend and, missing his friends, being very difficult. Originally, it was not actually going to be included for the Black Album, but the rest of the band had loved what James did write into this separate purpose of a song. Nothing Else Matters is a complete classic, and how can you not love this one when you can accept Metallica's direction of choices into what they want to write into their direction as a band? I love Nothing Else Matters very much. Of Wolf and Man, the lyrics speak into a man shape-shifting and turns into a wolf when the moon comes out, being told from its perspective, and the music's unrelenting expression. I appreciate the return into this similarity from what the gruntiness of earlier tracks had sounded, and I do think as well, like with Wherever I May Roam, to be, not growing up to the strengths, but yet alone, I do think it's a really suspenseful song. It didn't resonate as much as I wanted it to be with as much of the action. So yeah, another one which I do like still, but never fully, indulged with. The God That Failed. This marks the similarity and the following of lyrics from what The Unforgiven was. Written in E flat for the first time, I think, in Metallica's writing process. The lyrics were spreading more about the cancer disease spreading, and James's parents were Christianity-believing scientists, and they speak also lyrics-wise, into believing in everything they deem right or fair, and not a unique thing to have in faith for everyone. Heavily, heavily dark. Also sounded as brutal from his own grit. It is an emotional wrecking of Hetfield's writing, but it is one of the other best cuts on this record. My Friend of Misery. Jason's bass lines sounded dark, and the sound of his bass was amazing. Slow pacing to the gentle melodies. It makes this really melodious setting. Hearing some acoustic guitars to join in, the words come into this moody, depressive state about, feeling this self-pity and sharing a negative view on the world. And I love the swirling guitars in the bridge section. The overall effects from the continuation of the song is outstanding, from the choruses and the direction from the whole experience of the track. Struggle Within opens on a percussive made rhythm, lead lines to burst in, and the drums adding a hard rocking edge, an emotion going for some tension of either this description of mental health, on anger to depression and anxiety. However, as a closing track, the music does sound passable. I know that it was so self-descriptive and as intensifying and as personal, didn't stood out the test of time for me to think this is one of the best closing ones. Just like with the other ones that I have loved around the repertoire in Metallica, like with Damage Incorporated, to Dyer's Eve, and The Outlaw Torn, and Spit Out the Bone. I always had a bit of a difficult time with The Struggle Within, and I could have thought that My Friend of Misery would have ended things in a much better way. Overall, the Black Album by Metallica is a very, very good release to follow up their most complex record, as I've said, that being And Justice for All. The performances, to the songwriting, and the heavily improved production is tremendous to listen to. And let me know what you think of this album in the comments down below. Is this one of the favourites for you? Do you think this is one of the classics in Metallica's discography? And I'm very interested to see what you guys think about this record. I'm going to give the Black Album by Metallica, I will say, a very respectable 9 out of 10. It is a 9 out of 10 despite the flaws, but with these words being said, I do give this attention of an album like this a lot of the credit, because it amplifies and boosted the attention of Metallica, who would later on become one of the biggest bands of all time. And I do appreciate the overall worth in this identity. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.